It's the Beth Cahill Show. And now, here's Beth.
Good morning and welcome to the Beth Cahill Show. Thank you for tuning in this morning. As is the case every Saturday morning, there is a lot to get to, so let's get to it. I want to spend some time talking about the coronavirus, but I would like to do things a little differently than what you may have been seeing or hearing over the past several weeks. There is a real fear out there, and rightly so. I hear you on that. So I wanted to do this portion of the show today and try and strike somewhat of a neutral tone on this, because there are so many of you out there that truly believe that this is nothing worse than the common cold or flu. You then have others out there that have been stockpiling their homes and are having true anxiety and fear about this. This week, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. The president declared it a national emergency. So what does this mean? As far as declaring it a global pandemic just means it's a new disease that is spreading and humans lack immunity to this disease. It has nothing to do with mortality rates or anything of that nature. It just is a pandemic at the rate it spreads. And again, the lack of immunity from humans. The president has gone on to ban travel from Europe, and that is because the virus seems to be spreading in Europe unchecked. This is a 30-day travel ban. It may go longer depending on where we're at in 30 days. The administration said that they will look at it at that time, but for now it is a 30-day travel ban from Europe. The reason for this ban is because this is going to do what we all need. It's going to slow the spread of this virus, and ultimately that is what we need. We are no longer at a point where it can be stopped. So slowing the spread is key in how we move forward. You may have already heard the NBA has suspended their season. The NHL followed suit. March Madness basketball tournament is also no longer happening. Disneyland is shutting down for several weeks. School districts are closing in certain areas that have been hit harder than others. Just yesterday, in my state in particular, Washington State, Jay Inslee ordered the closings of kindergarten through 12, public and private, and that happened for King County, Pierce County, and Snohomish County. So those schools are scheduled to close until April 24th. So parents everywhere, including myself, are scrambling to figure out childcare situations. Schools are scrambling to figure out ways to educate kids from a distance. I don't tell you these things to increase anxiety. I say them to explain the why this is all happening. And that goes back to what we just spoke of, and that is slowing this thing down. These closures are to slow the spread, flatten the curve, if you will. And that is so that we do not overwhelm our hospitals and healthcare systems. So at this point, as of today, the reason that the president declared this a national emergency is to open up the testing kits that we have available. Because before that, there were still way too few testing kits. That made it where it was hard to determine how widespread it was. And again, these numbers are going to go up. They are certainly going to double, triple, and a lot of experts are saying even more than that. So by declaring a national emergency, that is going to release $50 billion for state and local governments to respond to this outbreak. Basically, it's a chance for states to kind of take this into their own hand, the federal government to give them the money to do so. And in turn, they are partnering with some private sector companies to expand the testing capabilities. This administration has come under fire for how slow the testing kits were made available. So this partnership is going to include, drive-through testings in some location, online portal screens to those seeking to get tested. You'll be able to go in there, talk about your symptoms, and from there, it'll give you prompts to go forward on how to get tested. So they are speeding up this process. And again, declaring the national emergency is key to making that happen. So now is it is a time where we need to take different measures in our everyday life. The government can only do so much, and what they can do, they are now doing. It may have been slow to start, but they are now doing it as far as the testing. The key now for our country is to make sure that we are not overwhelming our hospitals and medical facilities. So in order to stay in front of this, it has to come in waves, right? Again, we're going to talk about flattening the curve. You're going to hear that term a lot. So what does that actually mean? How do we do this? Well, it has to be a personal choice, and personal changes to our daily life have to happen. It may be an inconvenience. It's going to be an inconvenience. But what it's going to allow us to do is to take care of those people in high risk groups. Because remember, 80% of all of the people that will get COVID-19, they will show flu-like symptoms and they are going to recover just fine. But that leaves us with 20% of elderly people that have underlying health conditions that are going to struggle when they contract this disease. We must do our part in keeping them safe. And that starts with the slowing of the spread of this. Stay away from other people if you can. They are closing schools to help with this. Work from home if you can. Don't go out if you are sick. And for God's sake, wash your hands. If you go out of your house, wash your clothes when you get home. If you get food delivered or packages delivered, wash your hands after touching them. Wipe down the packages that are coming into your house once you've opened them from the boxes. We can change what this looks like in our country. We do not have to have it look like it did in China or Italy. But that is going to require each one of us to take the steps each day in what I have just described and make sure that we are doing these things and doing them obsessively. I will also ask that if you are feeling sick, limit your contact with your grandparents. Think about these things. We have to be cognizant of these things and take care of the people who for our lives have taken care of us. It is our turn to make sure that they are taken care of. The president addressed the nation on Wednesday night from the Oval Office with a message of unity. Listen here.
The virus will not have a chance against us. No nation is more prepared or more resilient than the United States. We have the best economy, the most advanced health care, and the most talented doctors, scientists, and researchers anywhere in the world. We are all in this together. We must put politics aside, stop the partisanship, and unify together as one nation and one family. As history has proven time and time again, Americans always rise to the challenge and overcome adversity. Our future remains brighter than anyone can imagine. Acting with compassion and love, we will heal the sick, care for those in need, help our fellow citizens, and emerge from this challenge stronger and more unified than ever before. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.
So look, these are uncertain times, but what we know for sure is that we're going to get through this. Each one of us just needs to do our part and remember, we are Americans. We have faced pandemics before and we came out stronger. This is not going to be the last time our nation sees a pandemic. We will get through this. It is going to take more than the coronavirus to bring us down. But let's do our part in the meantime. And remember, our healthcare workers are on the front lines of this. They are going to get sick. They are already getting sick. We need to remember to support them in the best ways we can. If you don't have to go to the doctor or the hospital, don't go. If it's something that you can handle at home, stay home. Let them care for the most sick and the most compromised. We also need to remember to support the poorest in our communities. They have to have our support. This is surely going to affect them more than most. We have to be there to support them. They have to be able to count on the government to get paid if they have to stay home and miss work. People are living paycheck to paycheck throughout our entire country. They have to be taken care of in situations like this when they are mandated to stay home or go into isolation. Let's help where we can, and let's be kind to one another. In these uncertain times, it is also very important for us to watch our leaders. Pay very close attention to how they handle the most unprecedented times that we find ourselves in. If they cannot be fair, and put aside partisan politics during this time, it is fair for us to never trust them again on anything. I have gotten asked a lot the last couple of weeks on how I think this coronavirus situation is going to affect the election in 2020. I have been asked a lot on how I feel about the president's reelection chances, and I have to be honest, I go back and forth on this. I really, really do. There is a lot of fear out there, and when people are scared and when they are in a panic for things they cannot control, they want someone to blame. And right now, this administration is the face of that blame, warranted or not. They will also be the face of something great if they are able to overcome this in a timely manner with very few casualties. That is what you get when you're the president of the United States, especially this president. I think early on, he has handled things in the right way. I think restricting travel from China was key. I think it was a bold move, and I don't think anyone else would have done it. There is no doubt that he saved many, many lives, and he saved many, many more from contracting COVID-19. There's no doubt. That has been said from leaders in the World Health Organization, the CDC. Now, with that being said, this is part of the frustration that's out there when it comes to this president sometimes. His policies are often exactly what supporters love about him. And that's where they'll tell you to look. You always hear this, right? You hear people say, don't listen to what he says, watch what he does. And when things are good, that's easy to do, right? When the economy's going well, unemployment is at record lows, illegal immigration is in check, good trade deals are being made. That is easy to do in those times. But when a global pandemic hits the world and hits our nation, and all people have to cling to is what is being said, couple that with their fear for their family's health, that's when the anger and frustration sets in and you want someone to blame if you feel like you're not getting the answers that you need. So how this is handled by this president will affect whether he's reelected in November. He can come out as a person who saved many lives by his bold actions and got the states exactly what they needed to control and ultimately get through this. Or the opposite can happen and people don't get what they need, whether it's from the state's mishandling or from mishandling the federal government. It's not going to matter to anyone. People will blame him. Again, warranted or not. Declaring this a national emergency was the first start of him being able to help states. So I think that we will see a lot less people having stories that we're hearing of not getting the help that they need. So he has done his part. The states now need to manage this money and make sure that they're managing the situation properly. There was a Gallup poll that came out this week that showed that for the very first time ever, since Gallup began polling this in 1999, that Republicans have a higher approval rating than Democrats. The poll shows that more Americans approve of the job congressional Republicans are doing than congressional Democrats, 40 to 35%. The rating for Republicans in Congress has risen 6 percentage points since late October. If you take that same time period for Democrats in Congress, they've gone down 3 points. Their disapproval rating has gone up 5 points. So they were at a 57% to now a 62%. So Democrats now have a 62% disapproval rating. The poll points out that the rise in Republican numbers matches the rise in President Trump's approval. He had his highest approval, we talked about this before on the show, in January and February. His approval rating was at a 49%. So what does this all mean for re-election? Because you know that's what's on the mind of so many, whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican, you're wondering these things. Well, I'm going to go back to the coronavirus. It's going to be just as important for not just President Trump, but congressional Republicans to make sure they're managing this as well. Because we can see that it is directly impacting our entire daily lives. It's impacting the stock market. It's having a direct impact on the economy. So if Republicans hold steady and make sure that they are the calm in the storm, and most importantly, make sure they are helping everyone they can, especially the people that are going to have a hard time financially, they will be in good shape. Their approval ratings could rise. For Democrats, it's the same thing. They have an opening here, though, and if they can put their partisanship aside and the American people can actually see that they are working on their behalf and working with Republicans to help the American people, by doing that, they're going to be seen as the leaders that people are looking to in trying times. Therefore, again, their approval numbers can go up, and ultimately, they can either hold the House if they do well at this or lose the House if they do not. In the next few months, it's going to be important to see, because we are going to see which party took this opportunity and rose to the occasion. So the last topic that I want to cover is where things are in the Democratic primary and what some key takeaways were for how the last round of voting was. So let's start with President Trump and how he did across some of these key states. Eric Trump was very excited about his father's turnout. Take a listen here.
What an awesome night. I mean, what an awesome night. So Obama had 174,000 votes by comparison, all right? My father had well over 600,000 votes, so he was 3x Obama as an incumbent, all right? So the last incumbent in 2012, my father has 3 times the amount of votes cast for him in Michigan than Obama did. An even more impressive number that no one's talking about is Washington State. My father has 520,000 votes cast for him right now, right? There's only 67% in, so votes are still coming in Washington State. No other person in the history of the state has ever gotten to those vote numbers before. By comparison, Bernie Sanders right now, who's leading the state, is at 334,000, right? So my father is well over 500,000 with only 67% in. So Hillary Clinton, by comparison, had 420,000 when all the vote was in.
So
my father's already.
Why is your dad resonating so well in Washington State?
Guys, we're seeing this across the country. The turnout he's not running against anybody. Nope. The turnout for a guy who is the incumbent, we've never seen numbers like this. It's 200, 300, 400% of the biggest. We saw that in Iowa. We saw that. We've seen that in Nevada. We've seen it everywhere.
So the bottom line is that in a situation where there's no significant contest, right? Trump doesn't have anyone that's a serious contender going against him. Republican voters are still turning out in large numbers to support this president. That's a big deal. It's something that people have to keep their eyes on. He has now received, if you were to tally up all of the votes that he has received in all of these primary states so far, he's about 1 million votes ahead of Obama and about 2 million votes ahead of President Bush in both of Obama and Bush's reelection years. So it's something to continue to watch, but that's kind of where it sits now. There's also a lot of talk out there about whether or not Republicans could regain the House. We just spoke about how they could possibly regain it, but it's definite that they're going to pick up significant amount of seats if anything that we've seen in California holds steady through the election. If you move to the Democratic side of the aisle, by all accounts, Joe Biden is the presumptive nominee. Bernie Sanders has not dropped out of this race, but his path to winning enough delegates it's a really narrow one. I honestly don't even see a path, but he's still in the race nonetheless. Joe Biden, man, I mean, he has had 2 weeks of incredibly strong performances, and it really doesn't look to be slowing. So as far as delegates goes, he is ahead by a significant amount. And ultimately, we've talked about it before, this is a delegate race, right? I mean, it is. It's a delegate race. But I want to just go away from that for a moment and talk about the voters. People want to talk about this race having been stolen from Bernie Sanders. And truly, I disagree with that. With that being said, do I think there were some backroom deals, made by more establishment type Democrats that put some pressure on the Pete Buttigieg's of the world or the Amy Klobuchar's to have them drop out of the race? Of course I do. And of course that helped Joe Biden. But that's not stealing the election. That is politics. It happens every single day. It's why politicians are so unpopular with the American people. It happens all the time. But stealing the nomination, no, that did not happen. The voters, by and large, did not take to Bernie Sanders' message. They did not take to the progressive policy ideas. And he continues to talk about, the polls suggest that the American people are on our side. The polls suggest. It's always that, right? Okay, great. But now people are actually voting. And the people that are voting are showing that no, that big progressive agenda that he's got, Americans are not necessarily supporting that. Listen to Bernie Sanders talk about this here.
The American people understand that the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is a starvation wage. They want to raise the minimum wage in this country to a living wage of at least $15 an hour. And the American people understand that if our kids are going to make it into the middle class of this country, we must make public colleges and universities and trade schools tuition free. The American people understand that we cannot continue a cruel and dysfunctional healthcare system. And it is amazing to me to see that even in conservative states like Mississippi, there is an overwhelming understanding that we are now spending twice as much per capita on healthcare as do the people of any other country, while 87 million of us remain uninsured or underinsured. And this crisis, this absurd healthcare system, is becoming more and more obvious to the American people as we face the challenge of the coronavirus pandemic that we are currently experiencing. Imagine facing a pandemic and having 87 million people who are having a difficult time going to a doctor when they need.
So look, Bernie's going to go down as someone who fundamentally reshaped the Democratic primary. He's going to go down as someone who reshaped the Democratic Party. He did it in the primary with Hillary Clinton in 2016. It's less effective this time around, but he has basically reshaped that party, right? He moved the entire party more and more to the left and more to his policy ideas, including Joe Biden. Bernie can be proud of that because that's all he's ever talked about. So while he may never be president of the United States, and it's looking like that, the shift in the Democratic Party was made thankful to Bernie Sanders. But as far as actual voters preferring his agenda over a more moderate agenda, it's showing to not be the case. So again, let's assume that Joe Biden is the nominee. What does that look like? What are some of his policy ideas? What does a Biden-Trump matchup look like? Listen to the president when he was asked this question.
And I'm very happy to run against Joe.
Mr. Murphy, you have both of your chiefs of
Don't forget,
staff.
one of the reasons I ran for president is because of Joe and the job they did. So it's one of the reasons. So in a way, it's maybe the way it should be.
I think Trump has a point here. He ran against the Obama policies in 2016 and he won. He has shown us that he can bring back jobs. He can lower unemployment. He can rally the stock market. He has permanently funded historically black colleges and universities. He has shown us that he can succeed for this country. Joe Biden is going to have to face these accomplishments that Trump has had and give the American people his ideas and how that will get better under a Biden presidency. Don't underestimate how hard that's going to be. We're talking about a man who's been in politics for 40 years. And in that 40 years, there's been a massive decline in American exceptionalism from an economy standpoint, also from a job standpoint and militarily. So now those are on the rise, right? Those are things that have come back under a Trump presidency. Biden is going to have to square those things, and I don't think it's going to be easy for him. In Biden's first test, I believe he failed. He addressed the coronavirus situation by stating the things that he would do, and all of those things were already Trump's plan. That's already what Trump was doing. He spoke about it 2 days prior. He then went on to say that putting travel restrictions does not stop the coronavirus situation that we're dealing with. And instead, he brought this into how it was a racist thing to do, and to restrict travel was racist. Biden missed the entire point here. Nobody said that travel restrictions will stop the virus. We are well beyond stopping the virus. What's been said is that it will slow the virus, and that's what our healthcare system needed. So if Biden were in office and he wouldn't have imposed travel restrictions, that would have increased risk to the American people. We would have more widespread because of that. Most Democrats have agreed with the travel restrictions, and almost all of the experts have. It is something that was a great thing that Trump did. So Biden coming out on his first real test and saying that he wouldn't have done that, he failed. This is a time that we need to use common sense measures, and calling travel restrictions to certain hotspots racist, that's not using common sense. and it's not saving the lives of the American people. And that, first and foremost, is the job of the president. So that is it for me today. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good week.
This has been the Beth Cahill Show. If you have any feedback for Beth or would like to suggest a future topic or guest for the show, email beth@thebethcahillshow.com. That's Beth at BethCahill, spelled Cahill show.com. Tune in again next Saturday morning at 9 for more of the Beth Cahill Show, right here on AM 1590. The Answer.